Iris van der Veken is here so that we can have a fireside chat, even though we don't have the fire, but we're still going to have an interesting chat about the work that you're doing, about the initiative that you've built and that you're building, and about the importance of sustainability, of action, of climate action and inclusion in the global jewellery industry. So thank you so much for being here. Iris, you are the Executive Director of the WJI 2030 initiative. And my first question would be, why was this initiative founded in 2022? What is the mission? And how do you want to support the industry?
Good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Iris, and Laurent. I'm very excited to be here. Marianne said it so nicely earlier. You know, our industry is all about trust and integrity. When consumers walk into a store, they're looking actually for this promise of accountability. And I think that's where the initiative was formed. It was actually co-founded by Maison Cartier, delegated by Richemont, and the Caring Group, with, I would say with humility, but with quite an ambition to say, you know, we need to do more as an industry, and we need to advance the industry, and very much on the topic of climate resilience, biodiversity and nature, and inclusiveness. And inclusiveness, we really focus on deeper dive on due diligence, operationalization of human rights, and of course, we should not forget the gender agenda for industry, Laurent, because 90% of consumer behavior is influenced by women, but where are the women at the top or in the company? So this has been the ambition of the initiative.
And so, I mean, taking this example, for example, what role do you think companies have in driving industry-wide change? And what role do regulators and consumers have? What are the kind of push and pull factors in this?
Well, I think it's important when we talk about consumer confidence, we can only do it if we as an industry are united and the whole value chain, and I'm talking about not just the supply chain, the whole chain is connected and is accountable and responsible. And that means is that everyone has to embed, you know, responsible business practices. So it's all about, I would say, advancing standards as a whole. And of course, what we've also seen is that where it used to be that companies would start implementing standards, that regulations have actually had an enormous push, especially Europe. And this has a major effect today on companies. I think most of the companies in Europe are, of course, affected by the CSDDD. And there's a lot happening now in 4 days when the EU is going to launch the Omnibus, so a more simplified framework on legislation, but it tackles everyone and mostly the SMEs, because indirectly, if suppliers are working for big brands, they need to adhere to that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And what do you see as the most important key trends for our industry in terms of sustainability right now?
Well, I think there are many. I think first of all, we should know that there are a lot of external drivers. I think if we look at today's world, looks very different than a couple of years ago. People are talking about uncertainty, but today geopolitics are driving markets. And so we as companies and as an industry, we have to navigate. And you know, we already see it. We see tariffs, we see local manufacturing. These are all topics that are going to be on the agenda of the CEOs of bigger companies, but also the SMEs, and I have deep respect for the suppliers of these companies that need to also, you know, find their way to adhere to some of those practices. So you'll also see the concept of circularity. I think today many companies are not looking yet on how they can optimize resources. And that's critical, thinking about, you know, from the moment you're designing products till you go through the manufacturing process, you know, looking at recap of energy, water consumption, but also in the after service and the repair. And I think that's where you're going to see innovation lead the way. Yeah.
And could I ask, I mean, you mentioned geopolitics, and so a lot of people are kind of wondering, what does that mean for the sustainability agenda? Could we assume, or could we say that sustainability just makes business sense, so that even if you take out the geopolitical angle, that it just makes sense for companies to invest in change? Isn't that much of what you've been doing?
You know, I wish it was so simple. I always say, you know, why don't we just do the right thing? Why don't we just do the right thing? Do we need legislation to do good? No, we don't. I think the risk is that some companies are going to look at sustainability just from a risk and compliance factor. And actually, this is what we should not do. I think it's about values, but also about protecting your brand. Because like I said, if that consumer buys a piece of jewelry, do you want to be associated with criminal facts? Do you want to be associated with conflict? And I think that's a big responsibility of accountability and integrity for your company. And I don't believe that also if you look at the next generation, and it's something, we talk about trends, we talk about the alpha generation, 2025, 2 billion people, young people that are so digitalized, who are influencing purchases. How are we going to attract them to buy jewelry? How are we going to attract them to want to work in our industry? How are we going to protect craftsmanship? So I think we have a huge responsibility as an industry to be a force for good.
Yeah, thank you. So we spoke about trends, but what about challenges? What do you see as being the most pressing challenges right now?
I think it depends on where you are in the value chain. I think that we see that markets are reacting very differently. I think we see, some very big shifts, about reimagining luxury. I think it's super important that companies continue to focus on I think, the core of their brand and on the integrity. Of course, what we also see, we're going to talk about it, if we think about the gold price, which is, of course, a big challenge for jewelry designers to look at, how can I still be creative, bring a beautiful product on the market and get value. And brands that have bigger margins, of course, have much more flexibility. So navigating yourself, I think, requires a lot of focus. But again, for me, the promise of integrity, that is non-negotiable, non-negotiable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And in Las Vegas, in 2024, in June 2024, you launched the Nature Roadmap. Can you maybe explain why biodiversity and the restoration of nature should be of importance to jewelers? It might seem like a bit of a naive question, but I feel like you have a lot to share on the topic.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to find a slide. This is it, yeah. So first of all, Laurent, we seem to forget that we all live on this one planet, and I call her Mother Nature, and I think we are all confronted, wherever we are in the world, with big crises. We see water, we see heat, but we also see how this impacts value chains and manufacturing sites. It used to be that it was a very disconnected, the agenda of climate and nature, from the business model. But now we see, if we have big issues that our storms or water, it has huge impact on our core business. And I know it sounds a bit strange, but I think, everybody has to be very conscious of that and think about how to manage. When we look at where we source from, think about diamonds, colored gemstones, silver, gold. We touch ecosystems of nature, we touch species. So the question is, how do we take accountability for that, positive and negative? And I think that's where the beauty of the initiative, with humility, Laurent, I would always say with humility, is that we believe we have an enormous role to play to lead the industry to understand that nature should be part of your core. And regulators are already pushing it. If you look at, if the CSDDD has impact, you have to look at climate, nature, and human rights, but it shouldn't be the regulators that push you. And that's where I want to give a very concrete example, and I invite you to go to our website, is we started a big journey with a nature roadmap that we've developed for the industry. It's open source. And this nature roadmap came through multi-stakeholder consultation with WWF, SBTN, TNFD, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, because we believe it's key that the industry understands the impact on nature, but also that you start to understand your dependencies on nature, and that you start building your roadmap. And this has been, I think, an enormous, inspiring journey. We're working with biodiversity experts, climate experts, nature experts to bring companies on that journey, but also we're giving solutions. So we have built a digital solution to be able to shape your nature roadmap. Yeah.
And I think what's great about your initiative is that you're not just focused on mitigating or reducing risks, sustainability risks, but you also bring up this concept of restoration. We operate in a world of luxury, so we also have the luxury of restoring certain ecosystems. So that is true sustainability in a sense, is you're not just reducing the impact, but you're also building.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also that's where education is very important. What I see is that a lot of companies are not taking that topic yet at the heart of their strategy, and that's not a criticism, but I think it's going to be an evolution. And I think also it's important to have role models, and I think that's where brands are already, have been working on it. And I must applaud the work of the Caring Group. Yes, their co-founder, you could say, Iris, you're a bit biased, but generally they've been on this topic for over a decade, and they've given a lot of their expertise to the initiative to be able to advance this agenda. Yeah.
Okay. And how is all this connected to the accountability mechanism that you launched in Davos? And what is the methodology, and how does it help companies advance in their sustainability strategy?
So what we've seen is that of companies, of course, some companies have to report and disclose. Looking at the EU regulations, there's a huge mechanism on accountability and reporting. But we see that for the big brands and the bigger companies, they need to know a lot of information from the suppliers. And let's give a concrete example on climate, for example. Often the biggest emissions lie in scope 3. So it's actually the suppliers, the providers. So the question was for us, how can we build a mechanism and a solution that is actually going to tailor to all company sizes? And how can we use technology that this is not going to be about Excel over Excel over Excel, but real-time technology that can track data, that can benchmark data, and also that some of the top banks in the world use. So actually this has been a project of 2 years, working with suppliers and brands and investors, looking at how can we build a solution. I invite you to, again, go to our website. We have also a small video to be able to explain. But I think the beauty of the solution is anyone can step in. If you haven't done anything, you can start. And that was really something, Laurent, I was very aware of that. I think at the end of the day, our industry is an industry of family businesses, thousands of family businesses. And I deeply respect that because the purpose of a family business is to bring it to the next generation. So how can we as an initiative bring companies on that journey, but also give them a solution where they can start at different stages, define their ambition, but also have a tool on that. And I would really invite companies that are interested to join in. I would be welcome to showcase that.
And as you rightly said, I mean, it's a journey. Sustainability is a journey, right? Nobody's perfect, and we're building and we're learning and we're progressing.
Exactly. And I think on the question at the beginning of the panel, if we as an industry want to move forward, we all need to move forward together. And it's okay that it's at different paces, but we have to move forward because we are not selling washing machines. We are selling beautiful pieces that are connected to emotions. And in my view, that cannot be connected to conflict, human rights abuses, undecent practices. Marion said it so nice, you don't want to be associated with corruption, criminal facts. It's not acceptable.
And one of the things you've been most vocal about is the importance of partnerships. So can you maybe share a little bit more on that? How do you envisage partnerships? Have you got some concrete examples of projects you've worked on, partnered with? And
Well, first of all, I always think it's important not just to talk about ourselves, but one partner. Well, I would say it's not today a formal partnership, but I would just say a coalition also that I think is doing fantastic work is Aura Consortium on traceability and transparency. And I think the initiative is an example also where we are now over 70 companies from leading brands in the world, like Chanel and Gucci and Cartier and many others, and Tom Wood, and so many organizations, but suppliers working together, but also working with competitors. And I love the fact that today we are sitting in the same room with a Boston Consulting, a Deloitte, biodiversity experts working together to build the best solutions. I think three collaborations that I'm really proud of is, I think, first of all, with the Global Compact in New York. So for those of you that are in the sustainability landscape, the Global Compact is the largest sustainability initiative in the world across industries. It was established in 1999 at the World Economic Forum in Davos with Kofi Annan, and it asks companies to commit to 10 basic principles on human rights, anti-corruption, labor and environment. And with them, we are working in different areas on education for SMEs, because we believe, education is critical, together with SIPJO. We've developed a solutions lab. I can give you a link. You can access it for free. You don't have to be part for the initiative. We think it's important. And now we're working on a suppliers engagement program that we'll be launching in the second quarter of this year. Another collaboration is with UN Women, but I think we touched that a little bit at the end of our conversation on gender and gender responsive procurement. Because when we look at the value chain of diamonds, gold, jewelry, and watches, there's a huge opportunity to empower more women, and that has to do with economic empowerment. And thinking about our industry with gold, artisanal scale mining, where many times women are the most vulnerable and children. So we need to see that we bring that topic as part of the core. And then I think one particular partnership is with ESG Book in London. So originally when people said, what are you going to do working with an investor technology platform to build a solution on sustainability? I said, it's about value creation. It's all about value creation. How do you want stakeholders to look at your company? It's about the value you're bringing to the consumer, but also value to stakeholders. You don't want to be at the cover of the New York Times with your brand that you have some horrible, horrific human rights abuse in your supply chain. I'm not going to call the names, but recently we saw some examples of big issues in Italy. Even on human rights abuses. How is that possible in 2025? So we believe it's important to have credible solutions, and with humility, we want to work with the best because I think it's all about quality. Again, to contribute to the promise to the consumer.
Because ultimately it's that if there's no consumer confidence, then the willingness to buy jewelry kind of disappears, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you. And you've been an activist for over 20 years on gender and inclusion. Why is this topic so important to you? And why do we as an industry need to care?
Of course we need to care. So Laurent, I had the privilege to work for almost 20 years on the ground in India, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Armenia, everywhere in factories. And I love factories because people in factories create the products. And finally, they come to the consumer. And that quest for excellence, for quality, for precision is super important. But at the same time, when you go all around the world, you can also look at, good practices. What does decent labor mean? What do we do when we have high seasonality around Christmas and Valentine and over hours? What does a safe environment look like just for mental well-being, but also... And how do women fit in? And often, I'm not a feminist, but, often women have more precision and are polishing better or are able to do things, really well. But, where is leadership? And I think that's where there's such an enormous opportunity for the industry to step up and give much more women opportunities, across functions and really come to systematic change. And we can only create systematic change if we work together with CEOs of companies, when we work with the suppliers, and when we work with governments to be able to do so. So yes, and I believe in that. I believe very much in that. And I've seen firsthand that it's possible. And that's why I'm asking every company to sign the Women Empowerment Principles. And that brings me to our collaboration with UN Women. When you asked me, Laurent, what I'm particularly happy about is our collaboration with UN Women. And I just want to show you something. And this is a timeline. In 2010, UN Women established the Women Empowerment Principles. And these are 7 principles that any organization can commit to. It's free. You can just go online. You can do an assessment, actually, online, understand where you are with your company. You see 2010, who were the pioneers, with actually the Caring Group, the first one, Rosie Blue. I was at that time working for them. So you see LVMH, Swarovski, Chanel, etc., moving in. And look what happens I think, with humility. In 2022, the initiative is born. We ask companies to sign the Women Empowerment Principles, and we see this boost of companies joining in. And these are 7 principles in workplace, marketplace, and community, where you can actually see, what can you do as a company. And to give you an idea with the initiative, and I hope this is for the jewelry industry, particularly this is important for the jewelry industry, because we see that from mining to retail, there is a huge opportunity to really step up. And I'm just going to say this can be, through systematic change, through wages, through development, but mostly through executive leaders that are going to embed a culture of transformation towards gender. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the initiative. We have done a first pilot on gender-responsive procurement with Gucci, with Chanel, with Swarovski, with many different companies, with Cartier. How much are you buying from women entrepreneurs or companies that embed gender into their core strategy? And Laurent, you know, we see that there's such a big opportunity, because imagine that we would do this in the whole value chain and understand better what we can do.
Yeah. It's huge potential, yeah. Thank you. And my last question, what does a responsible watch and jewelry industry look like to you in 2030? You named this WJI 2030. I'm assuming things won't stop in 2030. There'll still be more work left to be done afterwards. But what is kind of your vision?
If I think about an industry in 2030, I would first say, and that's personal, let's hope there's peace in the world. Because if you look at today, there's so much conflict. And especially if you think about conflict, we depend, when we source, you know, there are many regions in the world where our sourcing comes from that are in conflict. So I think for me, it's going back to the source, that companies know where are we buying from, you know, to the mine. How is my product moving across the value chain? Who touches it? And I know exactly the origin. And I think, you know, for 20 years, I've literally been an activist, and I see Raluca from the Natural Diamond Council, who's doing great work. For 20 years, I've been saying, we have to go to chain of custody. We need to know where our diamonds come from. We need to know where our gold is coming from. We need to know where colored gemstones are coming from. And this is 90% artisanal. I think the times are gone that we cannot go to transparency and integrity of the product. And till date, companies have focused on management systems, and that's great. And I applaud the work of the Responsible Jewelry Council. It's important to have standards, but we need to go to product. And look at the regulations, product passports. Look at claims. If today you want to make a claim of your product, it needs to be evidence-based. You will need data. So I would say a responsible value chain that goes back to origin. I think second, more collective action and being united as an industry. I think today we don't work together enough, Laurent, and I thank you for being so inclusive and welcoming us in Inhorgenta. We are really happy to be here. We need to be much more united, and I think we will have to be, because I am very confident that the consumer in 2030 will ask much more questions, and we need to have answers for them. So I would say the agenda for us is going to be about exceptional talent, exceptional craftsmanship, and exceptional beautiful story behind the product that we sell.
It's a wonderful vision. Thank you so much for sharing that, Iris.
I'm happy to take questions from the audience.
Any questions from the audience? I think we have a question over there. Let me, I have to try and get a microphone. Petra? Danke, Yves. Okay.
Is it? Yeah, it's working. Dag Iris. I have a question. Basically, what are the challenges, how hard it is for companies on an international basis, where there are a lot of wheels turning, for seeing the visibility and the transparency, and also having control over their sustainability and their transparency? Because a jeweler like myself, as a small-scale artisan jeweler, I am in direct contact with my gemstone dealers and wholesalers, so that my blockchain is actually mostly 3 people long. So the transparency is very easy in that respect. So I'm wondering what the challenges are for big global companies to be able to do that, because I'm sure that they have a lot more wheels in the whole chain to be able to manage.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. And I have deep respect for small jewelers. It's all about due diligence. So first of all, when you talk about sustainability, it's not a perfect story. We are living in a very imperfect world. And allow me to say, since I'm on this planet since 1970, what I've seen today looks very bad and negative. And so in that eco landscape, you've got to navigate yourself. So it's all about due diligence. And then it starts with prioritizing, because you can't do everything at the same time. So you need to actually look, when you map your supply chain, you need to look at, where are your dependencies? Who are really your majority contractor suppliers that you're dependent upon? And you need to start the journey. And of course, you will have only little parts of the puzzle. And that's why collective action matters, because often we are working in the same regions, we're working with the same suppliers, and you can start landscaping. And that's where I believe technology, I kind of missed that slide when we talked about trends. One of the big trends, of course, is technology and AI. And yes, AI has a lot of negative repercussions, but AI can also be of tremendous help when we think about forecasting, landscaping, and you will see that much more. And even with satellite information now, what you can see on the ground. And that's going to give a push. So I would say it starts by prioritizing, acknowledging that it is a journey, a deep commitment from the top, and collecting data, and also acknowledging that it's not perfect. When I hear somebody tell me that their supply chain is 100% perfect and sustainable, I get goosebumps. It cannot be, and that's fine, but there needs to be incremental improvement. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's where technology comes in, again on the data side, yeah.
Yeah, we have another question there.
Hello, my name is Marcin Pyrsak and I work for Alliance for Responsible Mining. We own a Fairmind brand, a certification from artisanal and small-scale mining. And Iris, I would like to understand, or have your lessons learned and recommendations. You mentioned, you need to go all the way to the upstream, but at the same time, this is a risk. How do you convince companies to take these risks? Obviously, with risks, there are opportunities to add value, to tell the story, but it's a cultural change. So, how would you help me sell gold that actually brings development and brings some assurance?
Very good question, Martin. And again, what you do with your organization, I would say keep moving the needle. So when people are asking my opinion on artisanal scale mining of gold or recycled gold, etc., I'm always saying, it's always a choice what a company does, but we cannot leave artisanal scale miners behind. And artisanal scale mining is very complex because I think there are different reasons. First of all, as you know, if you want to go into that region, and often conflict-affected regions or marginalized regions or very poor regions, if you want to get that systematic change and that scalability, you actually need public-private support. And you need governments, and if you are then thinking about governments with corruption and bribery and all those other issues, that's not easy. I think it's a role as an industry, and I think some organizations are doing fantastic, like your organization, the Swiss Better Gold, Fair Trade, Mind, I just to name a few, is that we need to, I think, even work more closer together, united all these organizations to come to scalability and also demystify artisanal scale mining. I think today people are really sometimes worried. They don't want to go into it, or they want to do it like as an intermediary. And I don't think that's the solution. But again, we also cannot, I think we have to acknowledge that we also cannot resolve this issue on our own. We need public-private collaboration. But in my view, and especially, and allow me to say, Laurent, I've been following ASM very closely and think about PACT and Impact and all these organizations. And if you think about also the issue of mercury and gold and how that comes, into the chain up to food and water, etc., and the impact on women and children, we as an industry need to be accountable for that. We cannot be associated with that. And that's my message to anyone, being a player in our industry, from mining to retail, it's a shared accountability. But, keep doing your great work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Iris, for this chat and taking the questions. And I think you'll still be here for a few minutes if anybody else has any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Laurent, for taking this topic. That's, I think, very close to my heart. And I also thank you for the interest. And I wish you a very successful fair.
Thank you very much. Thank you.